Hey guys, welcome to Pancreas Pals. Emily here, and this week's she's not a guest, she's a forever co-host. Guys, guess who's back? It's not Shady, but it's Christie. Welcome back, Christie.
It's me. It's so fun to be here. We're recording on something new to me. It's not new to Emily, but I feel super high tech. Oh, wait, I feel high tech because we're on Zencaster and because everyone, I finally broke down. First of all, hello. Also, I got a CGM.
Guys, okay, so for those of you that haven't listened to our earlier seasons, Christie, she needs no introduction, especially to our OG listeners. Shout out to you, Keith. It's about time you finally get a shout out. But Christie is the co-creator, co-founder, overall badass, original co-host of Pancreas Pals. No one freak out. Miriam is still going to be around. This is just a one off episode because it's well overdue that we catch up with Christie. It's something we like to do every season, not just for friends, but because Christie is totally dope. And also, she has a very different take on her diabetes management. Maybe not take. She's been old school. Her
I
words,
was
not
gonna say,
mine.
just call me Grandpa Christie.
Oh my
I know
God,
what I am.
stop.
I
So
know what I am.
moral of Miriam will be back next week, so no one freak out. But we should
And I
all
wanna I
feel
wanna come
hashtag
back to catch
blessed.
up with Miriam too.
I know I tag team you guys. It's purely selfish on my end because I need to be the center of attention. Clearly, I can only have one of you every episode. But yeah,
This
so
is like an Emily
Christie,
and Christie breakout session. Then I'll come back and catch up with both y'all.
yeah, honestly, maybe you guys should do a one-on-one too. I know Miriam would love that. I don't think I've ever missed an episode though, so we'll see how that goes. But moral of guys, so Christie is or has been purely on that MDI life. For those of you that aren't diabetic or familiar with that term, it's multiple daily injections, also known as she doesn't use an insulin pump. But beyond that, she also did not use a CGM, which stands for continuous glucose monitor, until recently when our friend came to the 21st century. Just kidding. Everyone knows that there's a lot of accessibility that goes into CGMs, and I won't go off on a tirade on that. But by this, I mean, Christie has had some access to it for a while, and she's finally decided to try it out. And I really am so excited to learn everything you're thinking about this, Christie. So I'll stop talking and let's dive right in. How did
Well,
you get how did you get to this point in your life?
what finally broke you? Yeah, so a little bit of context. No, I truly am old school. The fact that I am able to use this recording technology, I'm just like sitting here. I'm not even doing anything. I plugged in my headphones.
That's
Um,
because Christy has PTSD from our early days of the podcast, and we had to come up with really creative, basic ways to record while we were not in the same room.
but like that's just
Um,
what I'm used to. I don't know why I don't trust technology. I literally run on synthetic insulin, and I'm like, what is this tiny Roku remote for my TV? Like I can't handle anything. I was on a flip phone. I was using a flip phone
oh my
for
god!
years. I had to be forced into an iPhone. I was that person that was like, well, where the F are the buttons at Verizon? And they're like, ma'am, you just touched the screen.
You sound like my dad when he had to give up his BlackBerry. This is the most privileged conversation I've had in a while. Just so everyone's clear, we hate ourselves too. It's okay if you're like, oh my god. But
I am what I am. No, like the fact I just got a new iPhone as well. I had a very old model for the longest time. So now I can use Face ID to unlock my phone. And every time I do it, I don't know. I feel like Mickey Mouse and Fantasia.
oh
Oh my
my
god,
god,
that reference just aged me. No.
it, you got to stop saying that because I'm older than you. So, and Miriam's somewhere listening to this, keeling over because she's older than both of us. But I just want to do a disclaimer because diabetes technology is incredibly expensive and so hard to come by for so many people all over the world. And Christy and I know, and Miriam too, even though I can't speak for her, we all know that we come from a place of incredible privilege to have access to these things, these tools to help manage our lives on a daily basis. I'm not apologizing for it, but I am stating it and recognizing it. And there's so much that goes into factoring whether or not one can afford these items with or without insurance. Even when you have insurance, it's not always accessible. And America and the entire world has a really long ways to go when it comes to accessibility and diabetes management and really everything healthcare related. So I want to start with that disclaimer because we are about to get into the nitty gritty of talking about something that so many people don't have access to. But for those who do have access to it, or for those who want to, weigh your pros and cons, maybe you want to try a different CGM. There are other alternatives that are cheaper out there. This is purely informational, and because Christy and I like to live our best lives and complain and learn, and there's nothing wrong with any of this. So I'll get off my pedestal now, and we can officially dive deep into Christy's first time using a CGM.
Yeah, and yeah, I must say, I turned 20. I'm still 26. I turned 26 last year, which would make sense because I'm still 26. I'm tired.
Guys, we
The
went
price,
to College of Optional Math, known as College of Communication at Boston University. That is where Christy and I met. Head back to season 1, episode 1 to listen to that. But so that will come out very frequently, us trying to figure out
I'll
very
just
average
avoid it.
math,
If math
which
tries
is
to
why
work
I
its way
don't do
into the
MDI,
conversation,
Christy. That's why I don't
get
do
out of there.
MDI. That's literally why, because I had to pull up a calculator every time to figure out my ratios. Like, yes, I can do simple math, but also when it comes to dosing yourself, it freaks me out. Like, what if I made a mistake? All right, now let's jump into Christie's foray into the technology world. Please continue.
Yeah, no, just all I was gonna say is like when you go pay for your own prescriptions, like getting on my own insurance and suddenly realizing like how much was really being paid for because, my mom handled all of that. I was on my mom's insurance my entire life up until age 26. But
Nothing
I
hurts more
must
in the
say,
US than
as
that birthday, let me tell you. For
I know
anyone who's
the
under
26th
26,
year, it's rough.
we're here for you. We have a few episodes on this, and honestly, you're probably going to need a shoulder to cry on. If you are in almost any other country, you will either really need a shoulder to cry on because you have no healthcare system or you have the NHS or some variation of it. So, Christy and I have both made it through this 26th year. There is hope on the other side. Okay, now I'm really going to stop talking. Thank you.
It's budgeting. It's budgeting. So it did fit in that I have really learned so much about life budgeting in the last year that to have this new piece of technology, it was all just time. It was time when I started getting on my own insurance and I had to change over from Novolog to Humalog because I haven't had an issue with it, but even that was a change just because that's what my new insurance covered. So as I'm getting all of my prescriptions refilled, it's been a conversation in the last year. I have always been resistant to having something attached to me. It was like a last piece of control that I felt I had to just have my body free of something. I feel like I have to get insulin into my system, but the fact that I could do it in a way that I could take my mind off of it when I was done, I could inject and then put the pen away. That felt like more control to me for the longest time because I was diagnosed when I was 17. I only 9 years later, almost a full decade later, and I'm finally accepting this technology. But again, Grandpa Christie, it felt scary to have something attached to me. I finally decided that it was time recently. I've only had the CGM for a couple of weeks, but I found I was very happy with my numbers pre meals, but I kept feeling the urge to check because with all of this work from home business, I was just saying to Emily before the recording started, I love work from home because I don't have to factor in things like commutes and, this sounds sad, but like sometimes at the time of day, if my insulin sensitivity is just like up and I'm more prone to dropping, like traveling across the building to go to a long meeting and worrying about what if I drop low and I don't realize during the meeting. When I'm home, I feel more comfortable keeping numbers low because there's just less of a chance of me going low while I'm just chilling out at home.
You don't have
So
to walk anywhere, from one
I
room to the
I
next.
don't. I mean, this is a whole other thing, but like walking the dog is really the walks that I factor in and then my daily exercise. But I have those just down to a science now because I do the same thing every darn day. Um, but I realized that with trying to keep myself on the lower side, it was so easy to like slip low or to treat a low and not realize that I had taken too much. And then I would check before like dinner and I'm like, oh my God, like that juice I had before was way too much. So I'm like, oh, if only there was a way for me to see what was going on between meals. And like all these bells are going off in my head, like a constant glucose monitor, like something to monitor your glucose, but like constantly. like a constant monitor. Does
Christie's
that
like,
sound
"I
good?
by George, I think I've got it. I think
I
I've
think I
invented this."
I think I have it. Like, the last thing that was missing was just, like, for that song to come on my iPod Shuffle, which yes, everyone, I use an iPod Nano Shuffle.
You heard that correctly. If that doesn't sum Christie up, we're just so polar opposites when it comes to technology. It slays me, but I
No,
love
like,
it.
I'm as sad as it gets. The fact that I'm
This is
saying what
not
is that?
sad.
Is the song just called Like a G6? What's that song
Yeah,
called?
I think it is. I really I think that's just what it's
Y'all
called.
know what I'm talking about. So I
Oh
was
my
waiting for
god.
that to come on my iPod Nano Shuffle. Um, it's
I would like to say
fine.
it's not sad though. I think that we all have our own relationships with this disease and we all have our own ways of managing and coping with this chronic illness, and it's really not sad, and you are not the only one to feel to feel that way about
I
wanting
just
to wear
don't like
tech.
and I just don't like change. So I felt like when I was diagnosed, I was a senior in high school, so much was changing. I'm getting ready to leave home, like all of the changes that were going to occur already. Just having something attached to me, it just felt like another change that I could avoid. So I think I just pushed it off and pushed it off. But then I just kind of came to terms with like it's more information. And even though that could change my routine, I feel like it had to be for the better, and the control that I felt that I had having not having that information, it was not as good as the control of my numbers if I do have that information, if that
So,
makes sense.
yeah, so, if you wanna hear more about Christie's diagnosis story, head back to season 1, episode 1. It's a pretty harrowing story, so,
Y'all are gonna feel bad for me. You will
yeah,
feel bad for me.
I don't want especially shout out to Christie's mom, who is, like, amazing and is really the real MVP besides Christie for, pulling through that coma, but spoiler alert. Anyways, um, I just not ironically, but I think everyone kind of deals with that not wanting to wear a piece of technology or not wanting to be tethered to something. That's one of the hardest parts about a chronic illness is realizing the chronic aspect of it. And I know you and I have talked about this a lot, especially in our earlier years with type one. Because you only have like 2 years on me for it, but it's those 2 years they you learn a lot. And I know for when I was first diagnosed, they were like, like there are things called insulin pumps. And I was like, absolutely not. I do not want anything on me. Like tubing makes me want to pass out, like all this stuff. Like I'm super squeamish and I'm a baby and I'll be the first one to admit it.
And
I still feel that way.
you already
I,
have to carry stuff around, like, whether
yeah,
it's your meter, like, it already was just, like, so much physical baggage that the idea of having something attached to me, I was like, "Well, I already have
especially
to
at our
bring all this
ages.
stuff with me all the
Yeah.
darn time."
So Christy was heading off into college. I was a sophomore, junior, in between, whatever. Like, the truth is that like no matter how confident you are, you don't want to stand out for certain things. Like that's just not something that you want. And if it is, if you feel differently, like power to you, kudos. But like it took me a solid 6 months, I think, which really isn't that long at all, to want an insulin pump. And that was purely due to the fact that I just couldn't every time I'd give myself a shot, I would get like a giant hematoma bruise situation right under my skin and I'm super pale and it just got to the point where I was like this is painful, but also I don't like the way this looks and I'd rather be carrying around an insulin pump with a teeny tiny bruise or scar than like have these like welts. So I mean, I think it's interesting because anyone who knows me now knows that I am obsessed with this technology. Like I literally, did DIY loop and I have like an Omnipod in my Dexcom and I like coded an app that this community put out for, like a free source community for coding. It's just wild because I'm not that techie of a person, but like now I live and breathe this tech literally. But just because, Christy's like the perfect in between where it's like, yeah, she got to this place where she's like, you know what, I want more information. But if you ever decide that that you're sick of it, like you can take it off. And the same thing goes with an insulin pump. Yeah, you do have to get insulin in another form. Like you're going to have to do shots or inhalable if for some weird reason you're able to do that. I don't know too much about inhalable. But like it's exciting to me that you got to this place not because like I've always wanted you to have a CGM just so I had someone to talk to about it, especially back in the early days. But I
Yeah, no,
think that
I really held us back there.
you didn't oh my god, stop.
No,
Um,
but now that I see how much information is available,
it's
I
overwhelming though. It can
first of all,
be.
I actually really like wearing tank tops with it now. I've only had like literally I've only had to change it myself once. I changed it in my class because I had to go to Joslin Diabetes Center here in Boston to like be
Yeah, they
shown how to use it,
exactly, yeah.
which I loved. I don't mean to stereotype diabetes in any way, shape, or form. However, I just have to say, for like the purposes of picturing me in this class, it was me, 26-year-old Christie, and like 29-year-old people. Like it was me and a lot of senior citizens. Yes, I made friends, but it was just like such a wild time that I'm seeing all of the, I mean,
Oh, because they
honestly, it
put
was
you in
actually,
the adult class?
yeah, but I felt cool because I'm with all of these, I'm sorry, but old people.
I mean, 90 is
And we're
old, let's
all
be
learning the
honest.
same technology together. And I'm like, oh
That's
my
so
God, like,
impressive, though. I would
ex-
be, like, so first of all,
no,
obviously make friends,
and they
I
looked good. Like they all looked good. And I'm like, we're all
yeah,
learning together. Look at us go. Of course, then they were like, all right, so who wants to like model getting it on? And they all look at me, and I'm like, Earl, I just showed you pictures of my dog. You know, you're throwing me under the bus to like go be the
"Earl, I thought we were
model for
friends."
this. I thought we were down. I just showed you pictures of my chihuahua, and you're like, yeah, go up there. You know you can. I
It's
was
pronounced
like, all right.
Chihuahua, and I stand by that. But yeah, no, Earl sounds dope, but I just think that's hilarious because I had the uh, opposite foray into it where, like, I had to go to a class at Naomi Berry, the diabetes center up here in New York at Columbia, and it was me and a bunch of, like, 10 to 13-year-olds and their moms. And it was like me and I brought my twin sister. So it's like me and Laura just sitting in a class, like, and these little kids like had no idea what was going on. And their moms were asking like these really like, intense questions. And I'm sitting there like, what? So it's really funny that we had such different age experiences, but CGMs are applicable for everyone if they have access to it. And no matter what type of diabetes you have, information is power.
No, and on a given day, I probably could have ended up in a younger crowd, but I think you all have a taste of how comfortable I am with anything with buttons or whatever. So it was actually the right group for me because we were all asking questions with the same level of comfort, like, how do I download the application? What is this? But we figured it out. Really, they were actually more my crowd, I think, than a group of 11-year-olds would have been. Like, I was right at home. So I
It
loved
sounds like
it.
my
It
crowd anyways,
it was
honestly.
it was really fun. We all got to learn how to do it together. So I'm glad that I went and did the class because otherwise I could have done it virtually. But I'm very kinesthetic, like I'm very hands on. I have to do it. Like I need someone to tell me that I'm doing it correctly. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been comfortable doing it myself. But anyway, so I do like to wear like tank tops now and like kind of have it out. I'm feeling it. I want to get my little CGM tan this summer. Have like
Hell
ovals
yeah.
all over my body.
God, my
So
Omnipod tan is a sight to behold.
I'm not there yet with the
You don't need
pump.
to be.
The thing that's
You don't
holding me back there is that I do feel like I'm scared to have a leak or an
yeah, but
infection. And the way that things are going right now, again, this might be me being change resistant, and in another 9 years, I might be ready for something else. I just think that having the information to inform my injections for right now, that's working really well for me.
you don't okay, I can't emphasize this enough. Like, you don't need to be ready for it. It might not be something that you even I don't think it's something to be ready for. I think it's more of it depends on how you look at it. If it's something that
I
you
might never
want
want it. I don't
exactly.
know.
When I think of being ready for something, I think of like something that's in my goals that I want to achieve.
Right.
I think that as long as you are happy and healthy, that no matter how you manage your diabetes, as long as as long as it's working, like as long as you're not ill and you're not having like catastrophic reactions to things, like you never have to be quote unquote ready. Like there's people that have been on syringes, not even like pen needles, like syringes their entire lives, and they've had amazing, results with that. And why change it? Whatever works for you works for you.
Oh,
I
I
will
can
say
tell you've been chatting with Miriam because like you're soothing me so much right now. I'm like, you know what? You're right.
yeah, I mean, obviously, yes, Miriam is always like, I'm like, what would Miriam think? What would Miriam do?
Every
Um,
injection I do, I'm like, Miriam would approve.
yes, Miriam, I can hear her now, all the way in LA at her cousin's wedding. Um, but yeah, I think that it's also just realizing for me that like nothing is perfect. Like I love my insulin pumps, but I have had a really rough, honestly, year with all of my technology. My Dexcom has been really off lately, which is not something you want to hear, I'm sure, Christy, but nothing is, nothing's perfect. And when it comes to my insulin pump, I have had quite a few leaks, quite a few bent cannulas, and it's so frustrating because, you think you're doing everything right and your body's just not getting that insulin. So I think that one day will I go on a pump break? Probably. Am I there yet right now? Like, am I frustrated or burnt out enough to do that? No. I think that I think in terms of diabetes management, because again, like, I don't believe in control, I believe in management. I think that it's a whole bunch of different pieces to one big machine that moves forward, Like, sometimes you're in first gear, sometimes you're in second gear, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to keep moving forward. So I think that insulin pumps are great, but they're not the be all end all. And you have always kind of made me want to go back to using syringes, or not syringes, sorry, to using pen needles because, like, it, when the stars align and I take a naked shower, for anyone who's not diabetic, that means like no no technology on me, my pump or my CGM, just like fully like TBT back pre-diabetic days, like empty shower. I am like, hell yeah, I'm gonna scrub my tum extra hard because I don't have to worry about my Dexcom. And I literally am like doing a happy dance. And sometimes that makes me sad that I'm so happy to be without these things and I don't have to be using these things. Like I can take a week-long break. Am I at a point right now where I recognize my lows all the time? No. So that would be a completely different stressor and something I'd have to factor into it. But it's not the be all end all. We're all, if you decide, let's say within the next 10 years you want to have a kid or something and you want to be able to monitor your blood sugars more closely, maybe you only use a CGM during pregnancy. Or if you don't want to have a kid and you are going on a bachelorette party and don't want to have to check your blood sugar every 5 seconds, like, because you're drinking or whatever, you only wear it for that week. Like there's so many different reasons to use the tools that you don't need to use them constantly. um, that's another tirade that I just went on. We're here for Christy. Moving on. So, what were your first thoughts about using the Dexcom?
No, Em, I love all of your thoughts on everything. You've also been using it longer than me, so the reminder that like potentially taking a break if I ever felt like I needed to, that's just good for my mental bank. It's a good
Yeah.
reminder that that is an option. No, I love
I've
how the
never
CGM.
voluntarily done that though. I will say that. I've never voluntarily taken a break. I've like run out or I've like
But
had an
it's nice
issue,
to
but
have
yeah.
but it's nice to have the option. No, I mean, thus far, again, I've changed it myself once. I put it on in the class and now I just changed it for myself last weekend. It was fun because my mom was in town, so I was able to like show her like, mother, look how far we've come. Um, the first week, and again, take this for what it is because I've only had it for I'm heading into like my third full week. Um, the first week, I had a lot of highs and a lot of lows, way outside of what I've been seeing because I found myself reacting to every little
Yep.
time that I saw a spike between a meal. I was like, what in the hell? Like, I was just 100. Why am I 190? And I would take a unit and then be low. And I was like, well, what happened there? And it's because I'm not
Yeah.
used to when I say more information, it's helpful for me to see which foods are spiking me more between meals, but also I have to trust that like if I'm seeing a little a rainbow, a little curve
A
on the
little roller
chart,
coaster.
a
Yeah.
little roller coaster, um, as long as I come back down and level out, I need to not overreact. And sometimes after a meal, I'll dip a little, but then come back up. So immediately reaching for that juice. Also, not a good idea. Like, I don't have to sit there with the juice box and the insulin pen, just like ready to
Right.
react to any ebb and flow because these are things that were already happening. And they told me that in the class. You're going to see things that you're not used to seeing, and you can't pull that trigger and go for the insulin or go for the juice every time you see something edging in one direction or the other. And that was a tough pill to swallow because
I'm still
I'm used
swallowing
to
that pill, I will tell you
I
that now.
I've
Like,
been
it depends
seeing
on the day.
I've been seeing good numbers before meals, but it kind of prompted me to go back to notes that I have from like my earlier days. I mean, mentally, of course, but like, you know, you're supposed to have fat sources and protein sources with carbs. Like I remember dietitians telling me like try to avoid naked carbs to avoid the spikes because you want things to like keep you more steady rather than see big jumps or strong dips. So it's been a reminder of lessons like that I heard early on, but I'm like, well, as long as it doesn't like affect me before the next meal, but like it is, I just don't know it. So it's been so helpful to see it and understand what foods cause those dips and rises. But then also a reminder to let my body level out. Like I don't have to respond super quickly. So I really got there last week. And heading into this
That's
next week,
quick though,
I
that you
feel
got
more
there.
confident, but I've also had diabetes a while. So it's a mixture of this
That's
new
true.
technology with existing information and just putting the pieces together. So by no means do I have this 100% figured out. Believe me, I'm still seeing um, more ups and downs than I would want, but I'm keeping it at least in like, it's funny that the gray area is now good, but for anyone who does do the Dexcom G6, the gray means that like you're not above 200 and you're not
You're in
below
range.
80. At least that's how I have it set up for mine. Um, the other fun thing that I was able to do is set up the alerts for like the highs and lows. So what I did for the high, this was what I wanted to wait to tell you to see if you think this is funny. Emily, probably not, but I think it's funny. I have the high alert set up as the doorbell because hi, that's what you would say. That's what you would say when you open the door.
That
Oh,
is the most
hi,
Christie thing so,
ding dong.
seriously, head back to
Oh,
seasons,
it's
like,
a
1
hi.
through 4. She is the epitome of a dad joke, and honestly, that's, like, one of the most endearing things to me about, like, other than every other aspect of Christie as a human, she's amazing, 10 out of 10 would recommend. Her dad jokes are always so on point, and I love a good dad joke, and it's just, like, I wasn't expecting you to say this, but it is very on track and on par with all the Christie things that I know. Like, I love that for you. I love that journey for you.
I like laughed myself off the couch, and my husband's sitting there like, like it is funny, it
That's
is,
probably
but
like, "Ah, yes, my wife."
what?
1
No,
year of marriage later.
it's just one of those things too that I know is also the dad sense of humor in me. That if someone's not responding as strong, like as funny as I think the joke is, that's how big I expect the response to be. So I'll keep re-explaining it. I'm like, no, do you
Matt
get
does the
it?
same
Do you
thing,
get
and
it that
I'm
like
like, "No, I get it. Just
when
stop."
you ring the doorbell, you would say hi. So that's my blood sugar's high. I just have like the siren, so it sounds like a little ambulance when I'm low right now. Do you happen to know offhand, can I upload custom
I wish.
all right,
Um,
because I really want to have the like approaching an urgent low. I want the like pre Jaws music, and then I want when
can't
I'm
with
low for
you.
like the actual bottom,
I'm looking at
bottom,
my
bum,
alerts
bum,
right
bum,
now.
bum. If I can,
I
if I can get those two uploaded separately, so like approaching the urgent, and then like when I am low, I want the Jaws music, just so I can have a little chuckle as I'm reaching for my cranberry juice. That would be
honestly,
phenomenal.
I haven't looked at these alert sounds since I first got it, and it looks like they have added more. I don't see a way for you to change to a
I
custom, but
That's what I wasn't seeing. I also had
I can ask
originally for my
Matt.
low,
I think
if
you can
there's
hard
something
code it.
if he can fiddle with it, I would love to get the Jaws shark attack music playing for the lows. I originally had it set up to the baby cry, and then I was like, this is just going to make me never want children if I
Yeah,
associate a baby's crying with like my body failing me. So I
I
can't
have
do
the
that.
yeah, true. That's just, like, Freudian, not great. But I have the, as my urgent low, because hopefully, knock on wood, it doesn't happen that often, I have the buzzer alarm clock because usually urgent lows for me only happen while I'm sleeping because I catch a lot of them or, like, my pump will catch a lot of them, especially during the day. Also, I'm definitely a grazer when it comes to snacking, so I'm always, like, the first one to jump up and be like, "Oh, I'll just have a mango slice," whatever. Um, I wanna listen. This was not available, I don't think, when I first downloaded this, so everyone bear with me, but I really wanna hear what Nerd Alert sounds like. Oh, that's can you hear that?
I can.
It's not great, it's not what I thought.
No, there.
Sorry, that's my low.
Yeah, no,
That's my urgent low.
that's what it automated to, and I was like, "Hmm, can I play around with this?" So I just love the doorbell for the high. I'll never I think that might be the funniest thing I ever say. So I hope someone listening to this laughs because
I love that.
that might have
I
been my peak there.
honestly, if you change your sound or you have that as your sound, let us know, tag Christie
Oh
at
yes, think of
Alston
me.
Princess. Think of her fondly.
Yeah,
This is
hit me
Phantom of
up
the
on
Opera.
Instagram and let me know if anyone else has any other justifications. Actually, I do mean that because the doorbell thing I can't change. The lows I could be if
She could
someone
be
has a
swayed.
pun or a reason why they go for another low sound, I would love to be informed. And if anyone has information about how I could possibly upload the Jaws Shark Attack music specifically, um, as
If
my
anyone
low
from
sound.
Dexcom is listening to this right now, let us know. But also, if you're listening to this right now, why are your products so expensive? But like now they're never going to talk to me. But I just had to ask that. Yeah, no, I really want to know if you can customize. Like, I feel like that should be an easy thing to add.
I wonder if there's a psychological reason, like they don't want you to look forward to having a low because, like, I would chuckle
Yeah,
every
but
time I
no
heard.
one would look forward to that.
I
Like,
don't,
I
or
guess,
like
like,
they
I
don't want you
mean,
to associate certain songs or whatever. But
maybe.
I just would love to be able to have a little bit of a laugh as I go to get my juice and just say, "Oh, Dexcom, you've done it again.
So for
You've
those of
gotten
you
me."
wondering what that sounds like, the doorbell, the high, I'm gonna play it for you right now.
It's also less aggressive because I must say, yeah, that's
Sorry,
what
I
it
always
was
change it
original.
back.
It was
That's mine.
originally just to the blaring beep, and it was just too much for me
Yeah,
overnight.
no.
But
Matt is
that's
sometimes like, "Ah," he'll wake up with
no.
a star, be
o-
like,
Overnight, the alerts can be a lot because I have been fiddling a lot with pre bedtime numbers, just because again, I'm learning how to just read.
Right.
I'm someone who, on days when I've done a lot of exercise or I've just been trending well, I'll be prone to a low overnight, but mostly around the 3 to 4. And I can see it now, which is so much fun to have this information because um, it does kind of let me know when I should be rolling over to check. I have not been setting overnight alarms
I
on
was
my
gonna
phone to
ask you
wake me up
that.
to check. No, I have been trying because, and it's something that horrifies non-pancreatically challenged people when I tell them like I always set alarms overnight to wake up and check because if I'm high and I need a unit or I'm low and I need some juice, like it sounds simple enough, but then when they really process like so you never sleep through the night,
It's been
it's
10
a
years,
look on
people. Christy has not slept through the night in 10 years, and
in
she is
10
not a
years.
parent. Like, she's not a mother. Like, it's not like there's no
I,
reason
I'm so
aside from
used to
diabetes for
it.
this.
I'm so used to it, but I have been relying on the alerts to wake me up. So I have it set, and I know that you can adjust people who like really are able to keep it tight, like I respect. So they might have their high alert set for something lower. I have it set that my Dexcom alerts me when I'm 75 or lower, or I'm 200 and higher. Um,
That's still pretty tight, especially for when you first like, you just got it. I think mine was set for, like I'm trying to think. I think it was set for, like, 85, and then, like, the high this is when I first got it. The high was, like, 240 or something like that.
the thing is, sometimes it
Now it's
doesn't
much
bother
tighter,
me
but
if I'm like 79 before a meal. That's not too
the
bad.
end of
Like
the world, yeah.
I wouldn't end up dosing myself any differently if I was 79 versus if I was 85. So like that was kind of my judgment for it, but the bad part is then sometimes the Dexcom does lag a little bit, which I'm also getting
Yeah,
used to how to read that.
that
That
sucks.
if I'm dropping,
You could
um,
be lower than what it looks like.
if I feel low, I want to incorporate that. So like overnight, and it's only happened I think once where it woke me up because I was low overnight and I was like really not feeling good. But that's because I probably had dropped below 75 20 minutes prior and it was only alerting me after the fact.
It should only be lagging no more than 10 minutes, but everyone knows that Dexcom's not always like, there's these aren't, foolproof. They're
Yeah,
like,
it's not
things happen.
imperfect. So like
Yeah.
trusting the Dexcom, but the way that it was kind of described to me in the classes, this really is supposed to replace your
Yeah.
finger sticks. Like you shouldn't be calibrating. You
Yeah,
shouldn't feel the
no,
need to
that's
calibrate
not
every
fully
day.
true. That's I mean, you shouldn't have to, but, like, I was just having this long conversation. Miriam and I have had this conversation multiple times, but my friend Betty, who's also a type 1 diabetic, she and we've just been having really bad runs with the latest batches of the G6s. Like, they're much more inaccurate than the G5, G4 ever were for me. Like, I'm talking about, like, 50 or 60 point disparities versus, like, 20 to 30, or honestly with the G5 with calibrating, like, it was pretty much on point constantly. I will calibrate this sometimes. I find that I have to. If I'm like 70 points off, there's no point in me using that CGM. Like, that is a huge differentiation between like being like 50 and being like 110.
No,
I
you're right,
can't
and
do math.
that act no, that actually
120.
the point is that actually is a reminder. I'm, like, opening mine up now. That's actually a good reminder for me to
You should be checking every now and then. And I'm very
I have been leaning
neurotic
on it a
about
lot. I
this.
have been
No,
leaning on it a
you're
lot.
so they say that you can, and honestly, I've gone days without checking manually because I feel like everything's in sync, or I've been, I really only check if I feel off or if I get an alert that I'm high or low. I really don't check otherwise.
Mhm.
I will say if I'm having a really carb heavy meal or I'm giving myself a big correction bolus, if I do anything like that, I will manually check. But that's just because I'm super neurotic about it. I know that, like, the point of it is that it should catch regardless. Like, it should be trending in the right direction regardless of the disparities between your numbers. But sometimes the cannula gets bent. Sometimes, like, something's wrong or
I
it's too bloody.
I
Things
think also
happen.
if I like what it's telling me,
You don't want to check.
I know, like, right now, I'm 95 going straight, but, like,
You're
I
likely it's usually when you're really high that maybe not even really high, but it's usually the higher numbers that there's a bigger disparity. So you likely are 95 or,
it's just
plus or
that
minus 20.
I've said this so many times, but, like, also in season 1, so for anyone who is a newer listener, I am very prone to witching hour drops, as my mom calls it, so I basically any within, like, an hour or 2 before I'm used to eating dinner, and that can be a sliding scale depending on, like, what my schedule has been like. Usually, I eat around, like, 6:30, let's say. So anytime from, like, 5-ish onward, I'm very prone to a drop, like, to the point where I have adjusted my dog's walking schedule to make sure that I'm not, like, out and about in the world. Um, so I
Which used to
probably
be a real problem before. I mean, I'm sure it still is a problem, but
with the
you
commute
would
home
have to
from work,
stop. Yeah, you'd have to stop and manually check on the T sometimes. That's the
which, like,
subway, by
I
the
know,
way,
but
for non-Bostonites.
in Boston, but now I'm thinking about it with, like, the germs, like, oh my god, I can only imagine the amount of
Exactly.
germs, like, floating around my fingertips as I'm, like,
This is the COVID
delicately
world. People okay, that's like we don't have to get into COVID at all on this episode because 'cause we're nearing the time where we should start wrapping up anyways, but I will say that, like, that I think that's an aspect that people that don't have a chronic illness or don't have, like, OCD, to be quite frank, something that they don't always realize. Like, the chronic illness aspect of the COVID world is like, I am now thinking about where I want to prick my finger in areas where other people are. I'm sure
can
there isn't a
someone
lot.
breathe on me, and would
Yeah,
those germs travel to my fingertip?
like, exactly. It probably doesn't make the most sense, and it's, I'm sure, not scientifically proven in any way, but, like, it's something that I think about, and I, am an anxious human, and I am, like, OCD about certain things. Like, it's like, yes, this might just be, this is real, this is me, but it's still something that I never thought of before COVID. Like, it's something that I'm factoring in now. So I'm sure having the CGM kind of, even though it's not like we're going anywhere fast these days, it's still, like, great to have that to lean back on. And if you don't feel like checking your blood sugar.
Even just, like, at the food store and whatnot,
Yeah.
because it's these new things that I've added in somewhat recently. I mean, I got vaccinated in May, but I don't know. I think because we are nearing the time that we wanna wrap up, I think the note that I'll just personally end on here is that I feel more comfortable getting back into those daily activities that I wasn't doing pre-COVID, like going to the food store and whatnot, being able to pull out my phone and see what direction I'm heading in and, like, at least roughly about where I'm at. Because I'm at a point where I am trusting it. I think just because it's new.
Oh,
I
you
haven't
should be. I
but
trust mine a lot. Like, I don't
it's
want you to think
because
that.
I haven't had an experience yet. Because the first couple of days, and again, this is a new user, the first couple of days, I was checking my fingers because I was like, I just don't know how accurate to expect this to be. And it was only like 10 or so off.
That's great.
But it is a good reminder that if the way that I'm feeling isn't matching up, to check, like manually with the finger sticks. But I have loved the more information. I think I was scared of it before. And
Yeah.
you are going to see um, spikes like
It
sometimes
shows
after
you the
meals.
magic of the pre-bolus too. Like, that's been the biggest takeaway for me,
Yeah.
is the magic of the pre-bolus.
No, it
Waiting 10 minutes, that spike doesn't happen nearly as often depending on what you're eating. It's wild.
no, I love that. I love that. I love all of the tips. But I've loved having it. So if anyone is considering getting it, or has taken a break and not sure if they want to get back on, I am not scared of the more information. It just should inform your next meal. There's nothing you can do to go back. You can correct for the next meal, but you can't correct your previous meal. Know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah, you can.
Well,
What are you talking about? Oh,
that
I guess
if you miss dose and then you're
yeah, yeah,
dealing with
yeah.
a low hours later, sorry, yes you can.
I'm
But
like, "Christy, what?"
I'm
That's what boluses are for.
I know, I just meant
You can't change
you
the
can't
injection you've already given.
exactly, you can't
Yes.
undo an injection you've already given yourself. Sorry, that was quite misleading.
No, 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 you're doing great. It I
The
just
language is so
words are
technical, and
hard.
sometimes I do
Yeah.
forget the way that I use the word correct. It doesn't always
You're not
align.
wrong. I just wanted to
You
nip
can
any
correct
miscommunication.
for the meal that you already took in your next meal. But I just mean if you end up low or you end up high, while there are like this, you
It's
can't undo the
learning.
past, but
Yes. You can
you
t
can
factor
take
that
steps.
in,
Yes, factor it
and
into your next.
you can factor it into your next, and, you can have that as a learning moment and a takeaway, like, "Okay, maybe this meal doesn't actually have 40 grams of carbs. Maybe it has 28 grams of carbs and 5 grams of protein to factor," like, you whatever you use mathematically, whatever your factors are, everything can be factored in and changed. And the CGM really kind of just shows you your body's semi real time reactions. My final note is, I don't want anyone to think that, like, I'm suggesting you finger prick constantly and not trust your CGM. I just am a big believer in knowledge is power. And if anything feels off or you're second guessing something, it's better to do the good old finger prick than and be safe than get into a little bit of a bind later on. So that's all I'm saying, which I think Dexcom and any CGM manufacturer would agree. They would rather you check. These things aren't foolproof, but they are extremely helpful and insightful if you have access to them
Oh,
and if you want that
your
info.
final note was so much more articulate than my final note.
That is just not true. I love all of your notes. This might be the longest episode we've ever done. I think we should have Christy on again very soon. I would love to have an intersection of you and Miriam finally, all these
Yeah,
years
I
later.
gotta check in with my pancreas gal pals. It's too much fun for me because frankly, I don't have to do any of the work now. I just get to talk to my friends. So
It's not that much work. It's with the new jobs and COVID and moving and whatever everyone's doing, that's more work. But it's never work talking to my pals. So much love for everyone listening. I would definitely recommend following Christy on social media. She is at Alston Princess, even though she doesn't live in Alston anymore.
it's a lot of posts about my
Her dog.
dog.
And her dog is very cute, so would recommend. Follow us on Instagram at pancreas_pals. Follow us on Facebook at pancreas pals pp. Slide into our DMs anywhere you choose. We love hearing from you guys. Hit us up via email at pancreaspals123@gmail.com for any ideas, notes, comments. You just want to say, hey, what's up? We love hearing from you. And I don't know how many times I can say that, but it's true. Miriam will be back next week. We'll have more new episodes, and just, hope everyone has great shugs, a great rest of the summer. And if you have any questions about Christy's experience, feel free to reach out and we will connect you if she's willing to speak to you, because Christy is a hot commodity, people. So we'll try to hook y'all up.
You know that's not true because you texted me 15 minutes before we jumped on, like, "You busy?" And I'm like, "Of course not. You know I'm not."
It's literally a hurricane right now. I'm in New York, she's in Massachusetts, and
Yeah, I'm
I mean,
just
like
glad our connection wasn't interrupted. I mean, our
that's so
weather's
true.
okay here, but my mom said they're getting
It's
weather in New
pretty
Jersey, so
it's, pretty nasty out, but as a Floridian, as a former Floridian, this ain't nothing, as we'd say back home. Alright, now I'm gonna get a whole bunch of angry messages for my horrible Florida accent. So, thank you guys for listening, Christy will be back, and have a great rest of your week, everyone.
nice to talk to everyone. Bye. I'm waving. This is a podcast.
Bye.
Bye.